Good morning, and Bravo Zulu to the Italians, to Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli, who have won the Youth America's Cup. They moved that race, as we said yesterday. They moved that race earlier and did it an hour and a half or so ago because they're worried about it getting breezy and bumpy this afternoon in Barcelona. And we see live coming on the tube already. We've got the ESPN Plus coming up. Apparently here in the States, they were a little late getting on to the Youth America's Cup. A lot of people missed the action at the beginning. Long story short, and thanks Graham Sweeney for sending through this slide, which is now on the top of my Facebook page. The Italians led from wire to wire if you're a horse racing fan, but from start to finish, the Americans were penalized for entering into the pre-start H, the box, early, ahead of their scheduled entry, and took that, whatever it is, how many second penalty, and they were behind from the start. That's pretty killer if you've got equal boat speed, which is what was the situation apparently. And it was breezy and bumpy. Americans closed it up. I didn't watch the race, but from what I'm hearing from John Emmett and Graham Sweeney and others who watched, Claire Harrington, who's texting me from over in Barcelona, and Richard Gladwell, thank you, Richard, who's been texting over from Auckland, where he's watching this all very carefully. It was over before it was over, so I'm glad I didn't drag my sorry you-know-what out of bed at dark 30, even an hour and a half earlier. As soon as I get off the air here, we're going to go up to Tinsley Island to go over the club, and then up to Tinsley Island for the Stag Cruise. We had a magnificent reception last night. First time we've had a Wednesday evening reception. I got to get all you senior serious Fozy over here to the Stag Cruise. The vice commodore last night asked me if I would chair the committee again next year, and I said, no, please. Commodore, please, 1 year in the barrel's enough. Mark Holland, yes, ESPN Plus here in the States did not join soon enough. They not join until gate 5. So a lot of people here in the U.S. missed that pre-start penalty, and the Americans being behind from the start. And thanks for that update. Alex Hayworth, very good work by American Magic to fight back even after the start. Mark Holland, I did get the data, however, thank you. Well, I don't think we need that at the moment, Mark, but Ross Murray, hello from me. Where in Australia are you? Bob Walker, he coming in just a little late. He's in North Texas. By the way, those of you in Florida, I'm sorry, this hurricane has strengthened, as you all in Florida will know, overnight to Cat 4. 150 knot or mile per hour winds. So, hi, Jonathan Frank, who's normally in Texas when he's not flying for United. He's in London. But that has strengthened. As we said, Bravo Zulu to the Italians, who led from start to finish in the Youth America's Cup about an hour and a half ago. That race was over and done with pretty quickly, 4-leg course, yada, yada. And now we are looking forward to the first 2 races of what the kids call the Cup, or the adults or the grown-ups, the Senior America's Cup, and we will cover that. The Louis Vuitton Cup finals here for our 0500 regular, 0500 Pacific, 0800 on the East Coast, and UTC 1200 UTC watch party normal time today. No coverage here the next 3 days because I said I'm involved with this St. Francis Yacht Club Stag Cruise and headed up to Tinsley Island, which is about 65 miles up into the Delta. Those of you who know California at all, that's the Sacramento River and other rivers that go way up toward the state capital of Sacramento. And there's a little town called Stockton, and this island that the club, St. Francis, has owned for the better part of 70 years. And they run, it's kind of a retreat. There's a lot of stuff up there all summer long. And they run it as a retreat for various, there's a women's cruise last weekend. This weekend is a men's cruise. There's family cruises. There's holiday affairs. But St. Francis Yacht Club Stag Cruise, about 400 guys, will be up at the island for the next 3 days, 4 days today, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Bobby Steele, top of the morning to you in Newport Beach. And top of the morning to our Zoomers on here, Ed Worley, John Emmett, Graham Sweeney so far. Julia upstairs watching, upstairs in the Commodore's suite, gentlemen, and Commodore, thank you. Julia's not here at her table, but we will go in tight on camera to here so we can watch what's going on in BCN. No watch parties until Monday, unless that's a reserve day. If the racing continues for the next, it's first to win 7, as you all, I'm sure, know. So if the racing continues apace, there should be a reserve day on Monday. I'll be back here Sunday afternoon. And if there's racing Monday, we'll go live at 0500. And it looks like for sure there'll be racing Tuesday, the 1st of October at 0500. Ross Murray is in Canberra. You don't have to tell us this is the capital, Ross. Most of us, I think, on here probably know that, the worldly people that we are. Let's go to Graham Sweeney, who is standing by in Scotland. Graham, we talked about you when the Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin was over here yesterday afternoon visiting with Julie and myself. Heidi Purcell's back in Ann Arbor, but we were talking about you, Graham. I hope your ears were burning. You got to unmute yourself, or I got to turn you on here. Good morning, good afternoon, Graham.
Good afternoon, Tom. Can you hear me?
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, well, what was it all about then?
Well, he knows you from afar, and I guess you have mutual friends, and you carried on for quite some time about
yes,
what a cool guy you are. And Julie, of course, agreed with him immediately. And I said, well, are you sure? He seems like a nice guy, but one never knows.
I have my Crutonic moments.
No, he's quite fond of you, and he tells us you're a hell of a good sailor, which I guess we'd figured out, having never met. But we know about your photography and so on. But he can't understand why you're living up there in the northern reaches of the British Isles. I said, well, he has a beautiful spot, and it's quiet, and it's inexpensive, and he's retired, and he loves it.
Well, I had a choice. I either stayed working, or I retired and lived up in the middle of nowhere, and one of those two won.
Well, Graham, we're going to get down here to a start in a couple secs, I think. I don't see a countdown clock. Let's go look at the cable, listen to some audio, but they are previewing now the two teams. We know the Italians and the Brits are about to have race 1 in the Louis Vuitton Cup Finals. Who's your choice? I know where your heart is. I know where your heart is. And you can show us your Union Jack pillow. By the way, tonight we're honoring Andrew McIrvin up at Stag Cruise, and there's a traditional ceremony when at Colors at sundown, we take the flags down, and tonight is the British Day, tomorrow's Canadian Day. They're the guests of honor. And we know which way, because some years ago they put the flag up, your Union Jack, upside down, which is confusing to us Yanks. We have to get the white part up. And then we learned something. You Brits don't fold your flag up into a little compact triangle like we do.
No.
You just fold it up as a square. So, who's your choice, Graham?
It's got to be the Brits. It's got to be.
In how many races?
Oh, here we go. I'm about to become the wimp again. I don't know. Maybe a straight win. Who thinks?
7-0?
Could be.
Could be. Well, of course it could be, but really?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
I'm that committed, yes.
Okay, let's ask John Emmett. Coach John Emmett's on here. He's in Weymouth, I believe. Good afternoon to you, John.
Oh, hi, Bosie. I can't see anyone winning 7-0 at all.
I don't either. I agree with you.
I just don't think I would want to anyway. I like it quite close, but today will be very telling because I think it will be boundary to boundary sailing, especially because it's 6 legs. So especially as that sort of middle left is looking good for pressure, and top right you have that wind bend, so it makes it a bit of a one-way track. And I hope nothing is decided by gear failure or big sailor mistakes. But yeah, I think probably Ineos may have the edge in a little bit more wind, but we haven't seen them race against each other for such a long time until they come off the start line. It's pretty hard to know. Anything is an uneducated guess at this stage.
Indeed. Mark Holland is going to record that 7-0 prediction from Graham Sweeney. Theo Smith checking in from Tirana. One of my favorite cities in the world. I love your hometown, Theo Smith. I went up to hockey, played hockey up there, sailed up there at the Royal Canadian Yacht Club, went to hockey school in Etobicoke when I was a kid. Yar Vahe says it's breeze on. Yeah, the forecast is for 14, 17, maybe even more. It's bumpy. It's a meter or so of seas. Alan Long checking in from Ohio, Rainman in Baltimore, Maryland. Chris Fury down in Melbourne in Oz. Good morning to you. Well, it's evening, late night for you. How about a watch party with John Emmett as the host on Facebook over the weekend? Jonathan Frank is asking, John. That would be fun. If you want to host it, you know how to go live.
I am literally sailing. So I'm racing at 1 o'clock tomorrow. I'm racing at 11:30 on Saturday, and I'm racing at 11 o'clock on Sunday. So,
well, yeah. There's your answer, Jonathan. Jonathan, the 777 pilot for United Airlines. He's in London. He's not far away from you all. Who else has checked in here? We've got Ed Worley, who, by the way, gets in here early in the morning, our morning. He's down in SoCal. Ed, good morning to you, sir. Thanks for coming on early and helping me get the audio and the video balanced here in the studio.
Good morning, everybody.
Any hot tips on who's going to win this? Starts in 3 minutes 50, according to the clock here.
I would like to see Great Britain challenge New Zealand, but I think Luna Rossa is very, very slick and very polished. But I think it's going to be something like 7-5 is going to be the score.
7-5. Okay, you're on the opposite end from Graham Sweeney. I guess, I mean, how would you know? But my guess is it's going to be more like 7-2, but I think it's going to be Luna Rossa. We don't, obviously none of us know, but it is today. It's uprange. I haven't seen Gordon Smith on, but he'd tell us that the uprange is going to favor. As you can see, the lump and the windy top of the sea, whitecaps as we'd call it, white horses as some of you would call it. Sounds like a good day to go sailing, Jamie Hutchison. Alan Long is predicting 5-2 for the Brits. Can't be 5. It's got to be 7 something, Alan. It's first to win 7, best of 13. And again, it's first to 7 points. If the jury adds or subtracts points for an incident, they can do that, and that could affect the win-loss or the point record. But it's first to win 7 now in this Louis Vuitton Cup final, which is about to get underway in 2 minutes 30 seconds. Andy Cox, he's in Bermuda. He's in the office where it's Thursday afternoon in BDA, the airport code there for Hamilton. And my wife Sonia's at home, and she's now a converted Fosie. Hello, Sonia. Welcome to you. Mark Atchison is 7 for the Brits, 7-4. Tom Ogletree cheering for Rita, meaning Ineos Britannia. Big rollers on the course. Alan Long's getting more coffee. Richard Lawton says 7-3 for the Brits, and we have entry at the 2 minute mark or 2 minute 10 mark as the Italians came in on port tack, and now the Brits are in on starboard. And here we go, race 1 of the Louis Vuitton Cup finals. The Challenger select. Boy, it is. Look at that, breezy. Challenger Selection Series for the 37th America's Cup in Barcelona, of all places. Graham Sweeney, do you think these conditions favor your heartfelt British team?
Yeah, most certainly. I think this is the kind of conditions we were hoping for from the start.
I haven't seen the weather forecast. It looks pretty good tomorrow, too, but I haven't looked beyond to the next couple of days. Anybody else had a look at the forecast? John, have you checked that at all?
Yeah, really good wind again tomorrow. So that's why I said I think today will be very telling. I just hope the Italians don't have gear failure. I really want things to be one fair and square, not because somebody's got a screw loose, pun intended.
Yeah, well, exactly. They've had problems. We saw them have that software meltdown in the first, what was that, one of the preliminary races against the Kiwis. And then here we got 30 seconds to go, and the Brits chasing them in, Jimmy leading back to the line. I think John Emmett's right. This is a southerly breeze. You can see the shore there at the top of the screen. And they're sailing into the wind to the south for leg 1 of 6. And now Jimmy's set up to windward of him, of Sir Ben. as they're coming in here. Not early. They look just about on time, and it looks like Jimmy Spithill's going to win another start. Excuse me, he's going to be heading to windward. And the Brits are late. They'll have to tack away for clear air. So first blows here if this were a boxing match. And, of course, Jimmy Spithill's a bit of a boxer. Early advantage to the Italians, Ed Worley. Ed, what's going on here?
The Italians are good. They're very polished. They're, look, they're stepping out. Look at how fast they're going. They're doing well.
They are.
I still would like Great Britain in the Cup.
If you believe the screen, they're going 4 knots faster. Let's see how they get through this tack. And again, they had problems with reliability of the equipment, apparently. They a little slow out of that tack, but that's normal for both teams, I'm sure. We'll see what the Brits do, as John predicted, boundary to boundary sailing here. Rick Reynolds is cheering for the Brits, but he thinks the Itals might be a touch faster as the Brits go through the tack over there on the upwind right or boundary. Italians will cross ahead, it looks like, comfortably. 8 legs for this race. Thank you, Mark Holland, our crack spotter and statistician, who's up in northern Massachusetts, just below New Hampshire in the Merrimack Valley. 8 legs for this LVC final, first race. The Italians, Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli, after that software meltdown in that race against the Kiwis in the preliminary regatta, I guess that was the preliminary phase, wasn't it? Then they had the foil arm, that starboard foil arm that was up in the air and wouldn't come back down, and took them out of a race. And then, of course, they had their Traveler, that slider across the back of the transom that controls the lower aft corner of the mainsail. It controls the whole mainsail like a sweeping across the deck, and how there you can see it sweeping up to the left, up to port. That's the Traveler that does that, brings that trailing lower corner of the mainsail, and the main sheet, which is the wire that goes from that corner of the sail down to the Traveler, which is on the track going back and forth across the transom. And that pulled right out of the deck. And what was the race against American Magic, was it? And they're going up leg 1. Doesn't look like a very long leg. Did you get the length, anybody? Mark Holland, did you hear the race committee tell the length? As again, the Italians maintaining that lead more or less 125 or so meters off the starting line. The Italians won that start. And I think the stats, again, Mark Holland will probably remind us, Ed Worley, you probably know, something like 70-some-odd% of the time, the team that wins the start, and especially the team that's ahead at the first gate, wins the yacht race. Rick Hayes checking in from Chicago. Tom Ogletree, port tack looks straighter up the box right now. Around the upwind right end of the gate, both teams going around the upwind right. Ineos will trail LRPP. Luna Rossa down leg 2. What's Shirley saying?
Big push there and a little foil vent. And
commentators, same crowd we've been listening to, Steve McGyver, they're saying 20 knots now of wind. 20! One of you said this is, Ed Worley, I think you're right, this is the most breeze we've seen them sail in, right? Anybody recall more breeze than this? Steve McIver, the host commentator from New Zealand, the radio guy, who's, shall we say, less knowledgeable than Shirley, who's the double Olympic medalist from the UK, and the superb Australian multi-hull sailor, member of Emirates Team New Zealand, Glenn Ashby, who's also in the commentary team.
That was a little bit of, again, another
and
small
that's
defining.
Peter Lester talking, who's out on one of the boats, out on the water, on the TV boat. As the on-the-water commentator, the other three back in the broadcast booth.
On League Two.
He's a former America's Cup sailor and a superb sailor in his own right.
Top speed in the
As other than Steve MacGyver, as are all three of them, the other three.
Both teams now
Italians have stretched to almost 300 meters. Yeah, YouTube is blocking the video in the U.S. You got to watch on, as we are, on ESPN Plus here in the States. It's free to air on YouTube, Facebook, the America's Cup website in the rest of the world, or on some of your cable channels and so on. Not in the U.S. It's behind a paywall. It's only $11 a month, $10.99 on ESPN Plus.
208.
Wind velocity, Bobby Steele, our Gulf Cup weather guru, is saying the wind velocity will test every part today of the crew and equipment. I'm sure you're right, Bob. I'm sure you're right about that. There's the live stream right off of the, I don't want to get, again, a copyright strike, as I keep saying during these watch parties, so that's why we look at it on the tube, keep the audio down. LRPP with a comfortable lead going into the gate at the bottom of leg 2 of 8 today. And I think the most breeze we've seen, thanks Mark Atchison, the course axis is 208. So a little west of south, 180 being southerly and 270 being westerly.
Straight into attack, the British team there, washing off a bit of speed there, straight through the swell. That's a huge, huge slowdown for the British.
Graham Sweeney, your team's just had a big slowdown according to Glenn Ashby. What are you thinking of that?
Oh, it's painful.
Doesn't look like much of it.
Can I change my prediction?
Well, it's too early to do that. Come on, keep the faith, Graham. Graham Sweeney in Scotland, one of our Zoomers. By the way, if anybody else wants to join the Zoom, 267-220-6570. Passcode is 1851. 267-220-6570. 1851. We're at Studio B here at the Beach Street Yacht Club. Commodore Julia Vedekint, my landlady and co-host normally for our regular Tuesday and Friday show. She's upstairs in bed in the Commodore's suite, but she's here with us watching on the Zoom, and I see Gordon Smith now has joined us. Gordon, good afternoon to you. You outside of Copenhagen in Denmark, one of our regular Zoomers and a Brit by birth, and I think you are a big Brit fan here. You must be a little depressed by what you're seeing.
Well, you often use the expression, Tom, a click higher and a click faster. I would say it's not a click, but I'm interested to hear on John Emmett's views. I'm wondering why in the first leg upwind that the Brits didn't split at the top mark. They just followed the Italians, and I'm thinking, well, you know, I need to get in front, so I've got to do something that the Italians are not doing. That would be my view. I'd be interested to hear John's, but it's a series. We're seeing that Ineos is not sailing faster than the Italians.
Yeah, Ed Worley made that comment in the chat as well. John, what are you thinking of the Brits? Is it just positioning themselves on the track to minimize the number of tacks and jibes, or?
Hi, Tom. I think, unfortunately, that race was all about the start because it's boundary to boundary sailing. So they can't actually make the course any bigger. I don't know, actually. I think it's maybe 1.2 nautical miles, but there's a limit to how big the course can be. That's why they have to do so many rounds. But actually, that makes it very, very hard to overtake when it's boundary to boundary. The thing which was strange to me is the Brits didn't split at the bottom and then tried to do a head up and tack. And I would have thought in that sea state, that's a pretty high risk maneuver. But, you know, when you've got this 10 boat length lead, it's really easy for the other team to shut the race down. And it possibly would be a very different scenario if the Brits had got the hook, but they didn't. And here we are.
The hook, meaning at the start, if they could have gotten to leeward and then forced the Italians up and over the line, maybe. But that was not to be. Are you surprised, Graham Sweeney, by how quick the Italians are? I mean, they've built the lead here to, almost 350 meter lead as they come into the top gate the second time.
Well, you do know that with all the America's Cups, nobody knows what's going to happen until the two boats come together for the final. And I think what we're basically seeing is a little bit more determination, maybe, from the Italians. Their speak and their press conferences have been a bit more intense, and I think that's probably carrying them.
Speaking of the press conference, did any of you watch that? It was very sparsely attended. I got an image, a photo that Richard Gladwell sent this morning, and that actually had a shot. I'm surprised maybe it was a screen grab off the TV, but you could see the four guys on the stage. This was yesterday before the start of this final series. And then it was hardly anybody in this huge auditorium theater where they're staging the press conferences. And Richard made the point, once one of these two teams is eliminated, is there going to be anybody at these press conferences except for the media and a few fans, maybe, because they don't let many people in aside from media?
Tom, I watched the press conference.
And Ed, what was your reaction watching that press conference?
It was strange. It was very, very low key, and the questions were not really sailing related. It was like one of the reporters asked him if they had any superstitions on the boats, and it wasn't talking about tactics. It wasn't talking about the challenges of sailing these kind of boats or anything else. The question just sort of bounced all over the place, and it was very, very, very low energy. I was sort of surprised.
Sort of superficial.
There was no sailing question.
Hey, John Emmett, you coach John Emmett. Thanks, Ed. Coach Emmett, you have coached world-class Olympic and other sailors for years now, and of course you yourself, a multiple Masters world champion in the ILCA 6 class. Are you superstitious? And the sailors that you've coached, how superstitious is your wife Lily, the gold medalist from 2012, and others that you've coached?
Hey Tom, the first thing I was going to say is superstition only creates problems because you're just setting yourself up for something else which could go wrong. But I did love Kiko's problems, and he's probably in a lot of trouble now because he started talking about his wife and the fact that it makes his life very difficult that she's very superstitious. But I do know some sailors who have it, and it'd be interesting to chat to them within 20 years if they still think that way, or they see the problems they make themselves. I mean, Evie Van Acker, who was bronze in 2012, always had her Lucky King penguin socks. And I wonder what she think when she's 50 years old about the fact she always did that. But no, superstition has no part in sport. You need to be mentally tough and focus on the controllables. And I think that the fastest boat will win in this situation. The teams are pretty easily matched. But I would like to see a closer start to have a fairer indication. But the bullet looks like.
But John, you would agree. And what's the delta here? I haven't really been. I'm sure Mark Holland's
over 30 seconds, I guess.
It's going to be, here's 18 seconds. And I'm just looking at the delta in terms of the distance, the distance. Mark Atchison says he doesn't believe in superstition. It's bad luck. Now, John, what I was going to say is that, I'm not superstitious. We all are to some degree. I'm sure in the back of our heads we're thinking at one time or another, hey, is there some bad karma or bad luck here? But Julia, she'll read the horoscope, Chinese or the Western horoscope in the San Francisco Chronicle, and she never sends me she'll send it downhill, she'll clip it out of the paper, and then next time I'm up there, she says, "Here, look at this, your horoscope's great." She never sends me a bad horoscope. She never says, "Hey, you better wrap yourself in cotton wool," as you Brits would say, or wrap yourself in cotton wadding, as we might say, because your horoscope's bad. But I think there's a difference between superstition and routine, isn't there, John?
Yeah, I've just got to pick up the astrological thing because it does make me laugh. I mean, if they put it out in newspapers and they told everybody they were going to have horrible months or whatever, people would soon stop reading them or buying the newspapers. There aren't even aren't even 12 star signs. That's the funny thing. There's actually 13, but nobody's tried to rewrite it. So there's people out there who actually think they're one star sign, and in reality they're another. But you're absolutely correct. Routine is key. Otherwise, it's got out of bed late, got to the start late, got to the finish late, and some of it is physiological as well as psychological. So the timing for me to have coffee relative to the first race, possibly too much information. The timing for me to go to the bathroom before changing. The timing for me to eat post-race, it's all absolutely like clockwork. Don't even have to think about it. And if you know a venue, it really helps. So I'm at Hayling Island, and I didn't have to think today about driving to my accommodation. Car quite happily took itself. But yeah, superstition has no place on the boat, because this stuff with green ropes or whatever, that actually happened at a time when some of the best ropes were only available in green or a limited number of colours. So, yeah.
Well, Julie Aarons in Cleveland certainly agrees with you. She says superstitious is just a state of mind that is unproductive. And if you're just joining us, and here in the States, good morning to you, or down in Oz where it's late in your evening. In Auckland, it's 30 minutes after midnight. Now you're Friday morning. Sydney, 22:30 in Sydney and Melbourne. Welcome to all of you. We're doing our usual watch party. We skipped when they moved because of the wind in the Sea State. They moved yesterday afternoon the Youth America's Cup race an hour and a half earlier, and that's already taken place. And the Italians, Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli, won that going away. They led from start to finish. The Americans had a late entry, or was it an early entry penalty, start penalty, I guess. And that put them behind off the starting line, and that was the end of that in LRPP, even though the Americans closed it up a little bit. I didn't see the race. I was asleep because I just didn't want to get up that early for that race, and didn't get to bed till quite late. But we've got the Italians having won the Youth America's Cup and now doing very well here. Is there some, but still, it's an 8-leg, not a 6-leg track, but they got a big lead here. Sorry to say to you Brits who are supporters of Ineos Britannia. And if the conditions are going to be like this for the next couple days, guess what? This does not bode well, even for a couple wins for the Italian or for the Brits vis-a-vis the Italians. Here's the delta is expanded from, what was it, 18 seconds at the bottom gate, has doubled to 36 now. Sir Ben and Co. headed down. They did split this time. They're going down the upwind right or the downwind left side of the track on leg 6. But back to the superstition thing. I mean, even doing this show, I'm not superstitious, but I am a big believer, John, in routine. I do the same thing in the same methodical order, or try to. I eat a banana before so that I, as you say, don't get hangry before, and I get a coffee, and Julie and I go through a pre-show routine. But that's not superstition. That's just trying to get our brains and our brains and mouths settled in.
Yeah, superstition is more like you have to wear the same jock sack for every game, or a red sock on your right foot, or something that has absolutely no noticeable or known effect on performance.
Well, Dawn, I don't know, Dawn, how to pronounce your name. Dawn Wiena Van Horn, is that a good Dutch name or a German name? Dutch, perhaps, saying, hey, Tom, good morning from Punta Gorda, Florida. They got hit by a hurricane a few years ago. They have a sailing center there of considerable repute, the U.S. Sailing or similar sailing center, waiting for Hurricane Helene to descend. Yeah, that has, we said at the top of the show, Dawn, that's become Cat 4, as a lot of you will know. And that's going in there somewhere on Florida's west coast later today, Thursday, isn't it? I should check in with Mark Michelson, who's up in Idaho, where it's 6:30 in the morning. Ken Saban in Toledo, Ohio. Good morning to you, Ken, where it's a little later, 3 hours later than us. I reply to Andrew Barkworth, got to keep those Pirelli tires in optimum contact with the surface of the Formula One track, if not the water. John Von Londigam Anyone see difference in sail choice to explain the performance differential? Gordon, have you been looking at the jibs or the mains of these two teams? Gordon Smith?
I have been looking, and I'm really relying on John to tell me, but I would also say the design of the boat would mean even a different choice of jib was optimum for each boat. So just comparing the two jibs might not tell you what the optimum selection is for that boat. But that is also my feeling, that they're behind by something like sail choice, for example. That instinctively is what I think.
Hey, Gordon, you know what? I'm just looking at the times. It looks like the Brits are quicker downhill. Mark Holland, correct me if I'm wrong, or anybody else, but they were 36 at the last gate, and it's 28 now. So if there's any consolation here, it does look like the Brits are quicker downhill, as we've seen now over the last several weeks. Tom Ogletree, I don't know what you think, Tom. Ed Worley thinks LRPP is stretching out. By the way, there's a very cool guy on here, William Sutton Watercolors. It's on Facebook, and I looked at his Facebook page the other day, and he, like our 777 pilot friend from Texas who's in London, he's also a painter. And go look at his Facebook page, William Sutton Watercolors. Good stuff. As Alex Saldana is joining us normally in South America, but he's in Brest. He's in France now. Mark Holland saying, yes, I agree that the Brits seem to be quicker downhill. What do you think, Graham Sweeney? Is that your observation as well?
It's hard to tell. I mean, I think maybe they're going deeper, so they're trying to cut the distance, but I don't think they're going quicker. I know I don't.
Anybody else on the Zoom or otherwise have a view?
Hey Tom, I just think they've both got J4 jibs on, so I don't think there's any difference there. I think they're both on their smallest jib. If there is a little difference, I mean, 500 meters is 500 meters. You can win by an inch or win by a mile. So there's no way that you could close that gap, because as soon as you close that gap with just 2 legs to go, the other team, puts the elbows out, as Glenn would say, and makes it very hard. Because that's the difference between conventional racing, conventional match racing with your spinnaker. The boat behind puts up the spinnaker and exerts that cover to the boat in front. Whereas here, the boat in front is always throwing dirty air to the boat behind. And that's why if you get a little bit of a lead, it's very hard to be overtaken.
Ed Worley, Andrew Barkworth has just made, and all of the Zoomers, but let's start with Ed. Andrew Barkworth just made an observation in the chat. Ineos foils seem bouncing on waves, LRPP foils flexing on waves. Not quite sure what he means. Matt Suzuki joining from France. Hi, Matt. Interesting that Ineos turns with both foils down, LRPP only one foil down. Ed, have you been watching that? What's your thought?
I think it comes to the flight software that they were talking about. That Ineos flies the boat differently, and then Luna Rossa has a different software, because if you watch their foil, the boat is moving, but the foil is sort of staying stationary. So I think it has to do with the flight software that they've developed and what they're doing. So it's just different styles, it looks like.
What do you think, Graham Sweeney?
I'd like to say I know, but I don't know. I don't have a clue. We don't know what these boats have got inside them. We don't know what their technologies they have. And whatever it is they're doing right, they're doing it right. And we're not. So,
Gordo?
Yeah, I mean, I make the observation that Ineos foils are shorter and likely to be stiffer. If you're bouncing slightly, that may be having an effect. But that's just my supposition. It's not based on any engineering knowledge. And I'm thinking that although the distances are huge here, they're, as John put it out, this positional at the start, Ineos probably missing, to use your expression, half a click. I'm not seeing a tragedy for the whole series here, I'm maybe seeing a learning point. I'm maybe seeing the guys overlooking the race course from Team Ineos will be thinking, okay, maybe we should adjust this or set it like that. It's not I'm not looking at tragedy here. I'm looking at two competing boats who are actually probably quite closely matched.
Well, let me go to John here in a moment, but I just want to say that Vice Commodore Harrington, Claire Harrington of the New York Yacht Club, has checked in. Claire, thanks for your texts overnight, and Richard Gladwell, if you're watching in Auckland, you were a help as well. Mark Reed and others keeping me. I'd get up to take a pee, and I'd look at my phone to see what was going on in Barcelona, because there was some speculation they weren't even going to race today because of being uprange here. This is the most breeze we think we've seen, 20 knots or so. Claire is saying, my observation from the skybox in Barcelona, the difference in disturbed water behind the boats is significant. The wake behind LRPP is nearly non-existent, rather like a diver who makes no splash entering the pool. John Emmett, what is your thought about Claire's observation and maybe what we were discussing with the other gentleman a moment ago?
Oh, it's funny. I'm literally looking at the foils now, trying to see if there's a notable difference there. The problem is that sort of stuff is all very locked in, whereas the manoeuvres, one foil or two, that's still something that could potentially change. From my perspective, I think this race is done and dusted, and I'll be interested to see what happens if they have a closer start between the two. But I think people who are expecting GBR to have advantage, I would say, if anything, they're on average slower, because that differential between the upwind and downwind pace, I would say that upwind pace is by far the more important of the two if you've got to choose.
Jonathan Frank, who's again is our Texan, and he's a great painter. I'm glad we made a connection with Jonathan Frank here, who's also does in his media is watercolor as well, and it seems we've got him together with our other painter, new friend on here, William Sutton. But LRPP coming in here now to win their first race, draw first blood, if you were a Crutonic commentator. LRPP winning by heaps, by 650 or 700 meters. A lot of Italian, if they were F1 fans, you'd call them the Tifosi, but a lot of Italian fans there in the race village. And Bravo Zulu to them. Alex Hayworth is on, and he's saying it's a bit late for learning points with Ainsley and company. 20 million pounds in debt. Apparently that team is struggling financially, which is a little hard to believe when you've got Sir Ineos as your primary backer, but he may have said, I'll back you to this extent, this amount, you got to raise the rest, Sir Ben. And of course, Sir Ben's on the boat, so trying to raise money and do other things is a bit tough for him. I'm not going to go into that because you all think I've overplayed that. Matt Suzuki is saying that comments on the AC channel, he's also, as many of you are, watching the AC feed, Ineos might dual foil turn so they don't have to. Well, Matt, I just saw the Italians dual foil turn, so I'm not sure that's such a significant difference. That may be change. That may be when we're just focused on it. But they might dual foil turn, Matt is saying, so they don't have to dump the sail trim as much. But that doesn't explain the same technique for when rounding the leeward mark to go upwind. Exactly. The other thing I think is John Emmett keeps emphasizing the start. And when you start and have a lead, you now, elbows out, I don't quite like that expression, but you've got the freedom of watching a replay here now. You've got the freedom to go whichever way you want to go. You can go boundary to boundary if you want. You can play one side of the track or the other. We think the upwind right is favored on this southerly. At least we've seen that in previous days. But let's go back to the Claire Harrington observation. Gordon Smith agrees is an excellent one. What are you seeing, Ed Worley, coming off the back of these boats? Is it a much smoother wake being left by Ineos vis-a-vis Ineos? By the Italians vis-a-vis Ineos.
LRPP just seems to be more comfortable in this weather. I mean, look at her. She's riding on rails, and she's not kicking up a lot of rooster tail like Ineos is doing. So I don't know whether it's the design of the foils or where the foils are in relation to the water, but they just seem to be much more comfortable in this weather. I mean, that's a big lead. I mean, I'm surprised.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Wow.
I think you're right. I think we all are surprised. TV doesn't really show how rough it is, Jonathan Frank. What are you watching? You're in a hotel room, presumably in London, Jonathan, normally in Texas. Hello, Marcos Weinstein, who's down in SoCal. We talked about you last night at the Stag Cruise party, Marcos, with Rusty Arias, and with whom you went to Stag last year. Sorry you're not with us this year. Conditions out here he's in Barcelona. Conditions out here on the course are severe, 3 to 4 foot swells with gusts to 20, it feels. I'm on a boat on the course, and it's a serious blow. Yeah, we've been saying, Marcus, it looks like the breeziest conditions we have seen, 20-ish knots, as you said. RI Rhode Island Rover saying how much time between the races. Well, it was advertised to be quite a break now between these first two races. I don't know. This fresh water, it looks like, being sprayed on the boat. There's Francesco. Shall we go listen to Francesco for a moment?
We had a little moment. We are fighting a lot with the sliding times. And you just fly a little too high and you get those slides and you lose control fairly quickly. But I think it's all about recovering quickly, and the boys did very well on doing that.
Okay. Powerful conditions, Don Lunabos is saying. Don, are you up in wine country here north of the bridge? So not too long. Mark Holland's saying that race 2 now is going to be at 15:49. That's a long time. It's an hour. Bloody hell, that's an hour from now. It's 14:47 in BC. I can't believe they're going to wait that long, Mark. They may have advertised that yesterday, and maybe because they thought they were going to run the Youth America's Cup event now, that one race winner take all. But if you're just joining us, anybody, they ran that earlier. They pushed that ahead yesterday afternoon and announced they're going to run that Youth America's Cup, which was also won by the Italians. They won the start because the Americans entered early and got a penalty, and then they led from wire to wire, start to finish. Did anybody get the delta in that Youth America's Cup final, the grand finale? They're replaying the youth now. We're seeing them interview Ben.
Ben, you've got a bit of time before this next race. What can we expect from Ineos Britannia on this next race? You're going to have to sail more aggressively?
Yeah, maybe. It feels, if I'm honest, it feels like they've got the legs on us in this stuff. So, yeah, maybe we've certainly got to get our nose in front and not start like we did.
Alex, what are you watching the live stream on? You are in where? In the UK. They are running the replay of the youth now. 36 seconds, Theo Smith, thank you. 36 seconds, the delta in that and that was in the youth, right, Theo? Yeah, in the youth. Swap batteries and cyclers, yes, I believe they do. Ship 7. Delta was 36 seconds. Thanks, Mark. So here's a replay again. And the start, you had Jimmy Spithill to windward throwing dirty air onto the Brits. Even in this relatively breezy condition, there's still some dirt going on them. And the Italians, just as John Emmett has said, sailed away. John, whenever this next race gets off, what is your expectation? We're going to more of the same?
If you ask me my gut reaction now, I would expect Italy to win the next race. Having said that, GBR probably threw away best part of 200 meters for losing that start. And it's not only losing the start, they were then slightly out of phase. It's just so hard to come back from that. But even Ben said it, I thought he was very honest with his reply. And he said, I think they have the legs on them. And I don't think, apart from batteries and cyclors, there's much they can change. But I'm not sure what time the next race is. I'm hearing very conflicting reports. I hope it's not an hour.
Yeah, you and me both. Well, we'll see. If you're just joining us, thank you again. Our regular 0500 watch party, we did not get up at, 2:30 in the morning to do the youth. I couldn't stomach that with all I've got going on this weekend here in San Francisco. We will do this Not the next 3 days. I'm out of pocket. I'm gone. And I won't be able to do a watch party. If anybody else wants to host a watch party, go ahead. You do it on your own Facebook channel or whatever, but on your own Facebook and equipment and so on, and let the FOSI know here, the Friends of Sailing Illustrated. Don Lunabos thinks that Jimmy Spithill likes the big wind. Ross Murray down in Canberra, in Australia's beloved capital, I think that's the first time I've heard a sportsman say, if I'm being honest, and then to go on to say something that was honest. Was that Sir Ben who said that? Yeah, I see the guys nodding their heads yes. Graham Sweeney, you're still got a smile on your face, the good sort that you are, even though your beloved British team has taken it in on the chin. Graham?
Oh, well, I think John Emmett would agree with me that every race is a lesson. And I know it's a bit late in the day to have lessons, but I think we need to learn from every race. We need to regroup. We need to come back physically and mentally better, and we need to we need to have a plan. And when I was a boxer, I used to have a vision in my head. I used to
now, hold it. This is new news. You were a boxer? We
Yeah,
never heard. Have you ever told us that before?
No, I don't think so. Well, in my youth, I was a Muay Thai boxer. I used to box at places like the Green Man in East Ham for prize fighting. Before it was a cage fighting thing, that was what I used to do. But it paid the rent. But I used to envisage each fight. I used to go for it physically. I used to train every day, and at the end of the day, I would then mentally envisage what I was going to do and how I was going to do it. And it gave me an advantage because I had a plan, and the people that came in who didn't know me as an unmeasurable force, they didn't have a plan. So I was pretty much prepared what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it, and it served me well. And I later became an instructor for a club, and before I realised it was a mugs game and got out.
Yeah, this is John Emmett, Coach Emmett. This whole, tell us the technical term for when you are doing the visioning, as Graham just described it, and how important that is.
I mean, that's literally called visioning. Where people imagine, and that's the thing. You can only hit 1,000 tennis balls a day or whatever, but you can maybe visualize twice that number. And I certainly do it to try and get that muscle memory. So the 2012 campaign, when Lily fell off her bike and broke her hand, she couldn't sail for the best part of 3 months, and we did a lot of talking about how to do big tacks and visualizing rolling her rivals. We used to literally do that when we pushed hard on the aerobic sessions, just visualizing getting over the top of one of the rivals. But mental toughness, as I said, is another thing. So you have that. And the third thing, which is always hard to describe, but the subconscious, when you go into flow and you do things subconsciously rather than consciously, actually that's far more accurate. And that's why just knowing your opponent, knowing your boat, knowing the venue is so important, because actually you can probably make good decisions without at the time know why you're making them. But if we have a whole hour between start time, I might go and get myself a pint of cider.
A pint of cider? Well, you can do that. What time is it there? 13:54, almost 2 in the afternoon, almost 1400. Some interesting, we're getting great comments, not only from our Zoomers, but as usual from our chat as well. And visualization, the key to the zone, being in the zone, Don Lunabos is saying. And yeah, I even for something as silly and ridiculous as this live stream, before I drag my out of bed in the morning, especially early in the morning, or even before we do our regular 1300 show on Tuesdays and Fridays, you kind of visualize, okay, you got to do this and do that, and it certainly helps me. Jonathan Frank, the airline pilot, he's probably goes through, and airline pilots are famous for going through routines and checklists. And we do a checklist here. I should put it up on the screen sometime. It's like 40 items that Julia and I go through, and we really do go through it. It's not quite like a NASA launch or what Jonathan Franks goes through to get his 777 off the ground. He is going to catch the crew bus now to Heathrow. He'll catch up with you all from us in D.C. in 10 hours. Have a safe flight, Jonathan. Remember, it's all about the start and then VMG from there. David Morse is watching on Bella Marie, working off Rhode Island Sound. Steve Atkins, good morning, or good, yeah, it's morning to you, Commodore Steve Atkins. Sailing is all about flow. Larry Kennedy's in Manhattan in New York City. Rick Reynolds is, I want to go back to, there was an interesting comment, 2 interesting comments up above. I wanted to go back to and get the Zoomers' opinions, but anybody else in the chat. This was, first of all, where's Alex Hayworth's comment? First, there was a comment made here about whether or not Sir Ben should have chosen somebody other than the Swiss as their semifinal opponent. I predicted that he would. A lot of you did, because they appeared to be the weakest of the 4 semifinalist teams. But others of you argued that he should have picked American Magic so they'd have more practice and a better opponent in the semifinals to help tune them up on the assumption they'd beat them and then get into the finals. But Alex Hayworth is saying, look at this comment, replying up there at the top of the comments, replying to Yar Vahe, Ben couldn't pick American Magic. His contract rewards race wins and stages achieved in milestone payments. So Alex is arguing he had to pick the weakest team because he gets more money for each win, and he was better off having more wins than having a win but against a tougher opponent. Is that what your argument is, Alex? Very interesting. Does anybody know, what I'm going to ask, go to the Zoomers and see if anybody else is commenting. There's David Eichmeyer. Hello, David. It's a new name. Yeah, Bobby Steele, we could do a Skylink, and we've got plenty of Skylinks now, Mr. Musk's great satellite system. We've actually got fairly good. I could just use the cell system and do a watch party, but I've got a lot on up there, so I'm not going to try to do early morning stuff from Tinsley Island. Thank you, Bobby. And I'll be back Sunday night. You might be over. Well, I'll see. If they race 2 today and one team wins both, and they race 2 tomorrow, one team wins both, then they race 2 on Sunday, one team wins both. That's 6. Mondays are scheduled reserve day. We'll see if they race or not. And Alex Hayworth is wondering if, or Yar Vahe is wondering if Alex is privy to Ben's contractual rent. Let me say this, Yar, about Alex Hayworth. Alex and I, we never met. I don't remember Alex that we've ever met, but Alex has been superb with insider information, mostly about the Brits, but about other teams. He is, for whatever reason, very, very well connected. And I'm not talking about over the last weeks. I'm talking about over the last years. And I appreciate that. So he could well have that right. Alex Saldana's got a question for everybody. The commentators keep saying, quote, powered by humans and Mother Nature only, but cyclists are for sales only, right? Foil's still powered by batteries only, as far as I know. Yes, correct, Alex. Not the meme, but the kind of routine comment that is made by all the teams is that everything below the waterline is powered by batteries. Everything above the waterline is powered by not the cyclors or not the grinders, but the cyclors. So yeah, the sails. The sails. Anybody, Zoomers? John, you're on the screen. You want to offer any comments here?
Yeah, I mean, I always get a bit frustrated. I know what Alex is saying about the greenwashing, but I think, yeah, I wouldn't think too much into that. I personally don't know whether having cyclors makes that much difference, whether it would be better if they just had fewer people on the boat and and the batteries and whatever, I haven't really thought about it, because the only way you change it is to get a team together, win the cup, and then you make the rules, and that's not going to happen.
Yeah, indeed. Graham, your views?
I can see them going to just batteries at one point. I think the Cyclors is just part of the transitional process. I think we'll have the heroes at the front of the boat, and they'll be doing the racing, and there won't be Cyclors.
Well, that's what we've got in the AC40s, that the kids are racing, and the women will be racing. I hope the women's series is great, and I think it could be. The youth was pretty interesting, I thought. Gordon Smith seems to, I think, like the youth and the fleet racing even more than the grown-ups. Gordon, are you still feeling that way, that this youth event was really a fabulous event? Did I lose Gordon? I don't see him. Gordon may have gone off for a sando, as you Aussies would say. John?
I think he's got to go to school, Tom. He might be back later.
Okay. Well, we've lost Gordon Smith. Let's go to Ed Worley and see what he's thinking. And Alex Saldana, by the way, agrees with you, John, 100% in answering that question. Ed?
Part of the analysis was that Luna Rossa is using the cyclers to control part of the flight and part of the foil controls. They showed the cyclers out watching things while they're doing the tacking and jiving. So Luna Rossa is split up the workload even more to the cyclers. So since they're biking facing down, they have control panels, so they can control part of the flight modes that's going on, and also part of the mast rotation looks like. So
yeah,
I
certainly
think,
the mast rotation. Yeah. Certainly the mast
Yeah.
rotation is part of the hydraulic system, is the cyclers.
Yeah, so Luna Rossa has put the cyclers into more of a mode of controlling some of the things that are going on. And I think that's the problem that American Magic had, is when the recumbent cyclers, they couldn't even see the sails or anything else going on. So they were out of the loop as far as helping to manage the workload on these boats, because I can't imagine the workload on these boats is tremendous, just trying to keep track of everything moving so fast.
Okay, so we now know what's happening, I think, is that they're going to show this Youth America's Cup race, which took place a couple hours ago. 3 hours ago? 3 hours, 2 hours and 40 minutes ago. So this race, we already know, has been won by Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli. They've won the Youth America's Cup. They led wire to wire, but for television purposes now, they're going to show this race. And we're going to have to suffer through it'll be interesting, I suppose, 30 minutes of this before we get to the second LVC, Louis Vuitton Cup match of the finals of the LVC, which is slated, do we think now, gang, for 6:49? So, 45 minutes from now, is that what we're thinking? Bloody hell. I got a question here in the comments in the chat from Theo Smith asking, under what yacht club are LRPP sailing for, and where would a potential ITA defense be held? Cagliari in Sardinia. Yes, Theo, from everything we know, LRPP are actually sailing for the Circolo, which is, I think I'm pronouncing that correct in Italian, Circolo della Vela Sicilia, the Sicilian Sailing Club. And that is in, obviously in Sicily, in Palermo. That has been their club now for a couple cycles. They'd had other clubs previously. And of course, their team base is located down there on the south end of Sardinia in that nice fishing village. But it's one of the three big towns on Sardinia, as the Italians say, called Cagliari. And that is where they say they will host the cup if, in fact, they win. And we'll see as we're watching now the last 2 minutes and 20 seconds of the pre-start. Let's see the Americans, what happens here when they apparently enter the pre-start. There's the H, there's the vertical off that end of their assigned end of the starting line.
If you want it.
There's the penalty. The P. I mean, I don't know how the hell that happened. I don't know if Claire Harrington is on here in the chat. She, the Vice Commodore of New York, maybe has chatted with the kids now. 1 second, is that all it was, Alex? Oh, look at this. Andy Gardner's in Barcelona. Sunny and windy here. Most windy teams have seen in actual races. Sad the USA team was early, yeah. Was it only 1 second? Bloody hell.
American Magic currently doing over 40 knots in the start box.
So they've got that penalty that they have to wash off. The, what, 75-meter penalty. They got to put themselves, the umpires, they have to slow themselves down until the umpires release them when they're 75 meters behind their opponent. I think that's the penalty after the start. So the Italians just want to stay clear. They don't want to get into any kind of a potential penalty situation themselves and have a good clean start well away from the Americans and then sail up the track while the Americans take their penalty.
Potential push, potential hook here.
Yeah, you can see the Italians happy to be astern and to leeward, now dead astern or more or less dead astern. Small jibs on those boats in this breeze. The Italians just minding their own business. Looks like they're going to tack away here and go up the upwind right side of the track.
This is the Unicredit Youth America's Cup final.
Thank you, Steve McIver. That's a big help. Mention the sponsor's name again. Now the Americans have got to slow down, or they'll get another penalty if they don't do it right away. Now they're taking it. You know, the boats, these small boats, we've said this several times on the chat, and others have. A lot of those who were engaging me about the America's Cup last night at the Stag Cruise party, all saying how much more lively and how much even faster these boats look than the big boats. It's a bit of hobby horsing, and they just look faster because I guess they're smaller and bumping through the water. The penalty's been washed, and this is how the Americans started well behind the Italians. It's what Peter Lester is calling an unforced error. Is anyone else bothered by this noise? It's kind of an industrial noise that comes off these boats nonstop. It sort of sounds like you're in a factory somewhere. And this was a complaint last night. People were grabbing me that were at this Stag Cruise reception. There's sailors that are there, good sailors from around the Bay Area, but also around the country and beyond, actually, outside the country. Got a little closer here. And they're all saying, why do they keep the audio on so loud off the boats that you can barely hear the commentators? And we all know the answer to that. They don't have stadium noise. This is not a rugby match or a American football match or a baseball where you've got stadium noise, the crowd. So I guess they have the need to have what the TV guys call ambient sound. And it's very, shall we say, industrial.
Okay, Benji, brother. 29. Over some performance, guys. Okay, we are both one and in.
You know, this is a pretty good match. This is the first time I'm seeing it. I'm sure some of you, especially those of you in Europe, who saw it in your early afternoon, and maybe those of you who saw it late in your evening down in Auckland or in Australia or New Zealand. This looks like a pretty good match here, at least after the penalty got washed. If you're just joining us, this is a replay of the youth. They don't have replay up here because they don't want you to think that it is, I guess. But it is a replay from the Youth America's Cup final, the grand finale, which took place 3 hours ago. And of course, the Italians went on to win. and win the Youth American UniCredit Youth America's Cup. Graham Sweeney, what are you thinking here? Did you see this live 3 hours ago, Graham?
Yes, Tom, I did. It was a good race, but it was, as most of these races are, it was lost at the start, and it was a very sad mistake. And I think Mr. Harry will be reminded of this for quite a long while. I hope it doesn't affect him. But yeah, it was a big shame.
Hey Graham, a lot of chat here about why this youth was just one race, why it's the Sail GP winner take all, and I agree. Julie Ahrens and Steve Adkins are saying, why is this not at least a first to win 2, best of 3? And the other comment is, and I'll ask you to react to it, but Alex Hayworth is saying Marco Gradoni, who's the superb helm, the starboard side, the main helm on the Italian boat, he's had over 200 days of AC-40 test boat and AC-75 sailing in the last 2 years, whereas H4, they had this, okay, we've heard about this. This is where the Americans got so far behind that wobble as they went through the top gate. So Gradoni, who's the 3-time Optimus world champion, and he's a moth sailor and so on, but he's been embedded in Luna Rossa Prata Pirelli. He drove the AC-40 for the team, was one of the drivers that drove the AC-40 for LRPP during the Jeddah preliminary regatta. Okay, we're going to see this again from the Americans. And that's where their lead suddenly expanded. That is, the Italians got to 400 meters or so ahead of the Americans. Annie Gardner, our boys sailed great considering how little time. Annie's an American and a superb sailor, monohull sailor, multi-hull sailor, sailed with Bill Koch's team in 92 and 5, or Annie just 95, I can't remember, in the America's Cup San Diego. Our boys sailed great considering how little time they had to train together compared to the Italians at least. Yeah, Fog Machine, good morning to you, Lance. Nice to see you at the Stag Cruise party last night, albeit briefly. It's like somebody's grinding in an auto shop.
They're calming it down.
Sounds like an old man who's having... Hey, Grant, you're not old like I am. Sounds like an old man who's having some kind of lower track problem. Graham Sweeney?
At least it doesn't sound like a Patriot. I mean, that was sounding like an strangled cow when it was making its noises. But I'm not into this.
It's like what? A strangled cow?
Yeah, it sounded like someone was grabbing his udders too tightly.
Hey, Ed Worley, Ed, do you agree? It sounds like a cow that's the udders. You've done it, Graham.
I don't know. I mean, there's just so much noise coming off the boats, and they have to really use the hydraulics so much, and they can't silence the hydraulics, so it's distracting. But the boats are so far away, you don't get a sense of the speed anyway. And I don't know if they can, it's just different. I mean, you can't. One thing I said is that in the starts, nobody's hooked anybody yet. People have tried it, but different teams have tried it, but you can't hook anybody because there's so much disturbed air coming off the back of the boat. You can't hook anybody like they do in like an IACC boats or 12s.
That's a really good point. It's tough to hook.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Ben tried to do. He tried to get up there and do the hook. But how do you do the hook also when you have that imaginary triangle around the boat?
That's true, too.
Because all you got to do is just move your stern a little bit over to the left, and you cop a penalty.
Exactly.
So it's match racing, but not the match racing that all of us grew up doing. So.
A cow whose udders are being pulled a little too hard. That was Graham Sweeney, the comment of the day. I can hear Julia laughing upstairs in her Commodore's suite. Yeah, Ed Worley, the U.S., you said in the chat, the U.S. lost the rudder to ventilation. Yep. Julie Aarons, it isn't mentioned enough. Moth experience is the best training for AC racing. Good point, I think, Julie Aarons. Baton Rouge, Baton Cannon in Charleston, South Carolina, he's saying the noise from the hydraulics is better now than it was during the last cycle. That's, I think, a fair comment, too. It was pretty noisy last time. And it's not really match racing, as Jeff Kitson says. It's really not match racing. It is fleet racing. So in this case, it's fleet racing. It's match racing because there's only 2 boats, but I think what Jeff means is there's not a lot of yacht to yacht, team to team, boat to boat maneuvering. They're sailing boundary to boundary, trying to minimize, as SailGP would say, the maneuvers. Okay, if you're just joining us again, it's 6:16 here in the morning in San Francisco. We've been at this since 0500. I did not get up and watch or let alone live stream the Youth America's Cup. We're watching a replay of that race that took place 3+ hours ago now, about 3 hours ago. The Italians won it, and now we know why they've delayed the start of the second LV race, the LVC, the Louis Vuitton Cup Final, is so the TV can play this race. And the other 2 teams are cooling, that is the Italians and the Brits, are cooling their heels out there bobbing around, changing cyclers, changing batteries, but they've long since done that because, as you know, the turnaround time when the TV hadn't intervened was a lot shorter, but they got to give Uni credit, their sponsor time on the air. I mean, TV is ruining sport. Julie Aarons says her washing machine, her clothes washer, makes a similar graining noise. Yeah, Bob Walker is a bit of an audio engineer. I don't know how much directional mics would really help. The problem is with directional mics, they're trying to pick up the ambient sound. They're trying to pick this noise up to give it some ambient sound. Ed Worley, follow the dollars. But bloody hell. TV. Now college football, which I love, and a lot of you do here in the States at least, is, you have these big universities with huge following, alumni. They've got hundreds, more than 100 years, some of them, of alumni followers and generations of people. Even my daughter, who did not go to the University of Michigan, kind of has a soft spot in her heart for the U of M because she knows both Leslie, my wife, and I both went to school there. And multiply that times hundreds of thousands, millions even. And you got these families that follow these college football teams, and it's on Saturday, it takes over the country. But it used to be you'd watch a college football game, and there'd be a few commercials in the first quarter and a few more in the second quarter. Now, it seems like every change of possession, one team punts and the other team gets the ball, it seems like they go to commercial break, and it drives me crazy. Ed Worley, you're here in the States. Are you a college football fan?
Yeah, I am. My big game every year is an Army-Navy game where I root for Navy, so that's my big game.
Were you in the Navy?
I wanted to go to the Naval Academy, but I got a scholarship for engineering school instead. But I wanted to go to the Naval Academy is where I wanted to go.
Where did you go to uni?
I went to Cal State Fullerton down in Southern California, aerospace engineering degree down there. So.
Cool. Okay. And you're recently retired, is that right?
Yeah, it's very strange. I just retired. I don't know what to do.
Well, we're grateful for you coming on here and joining the Zoomers. John's going to get a pint of cider, he said. And Graham's taking a powder here. Daniel Butler. Hello, Daniel. That's why I watch the NFL Red Zone, so you don't deal with all that BS. Well, that's a streaming service. What, NFL does that? Daniel, so you don't have to watch all those commercials. Julie agreeing with me. Yeah, I hate those damn commercials. And Larry Kennedy, now they've legalized in the States. You all have had betting in the UK and Australia, New Zealand, and beyond for years. But here in the States now, they've allowed betting state by state and on college football and other college athletics, I guess. And that's taking over. I mean, the betting business has become, I mean, it always was a big deal for professional sports, but now for collegiate sports, it's become a huge deal. Ed's asking, do the TV producers think yet that grinding, moaning noise of the hydraulics make it interesting? I don't think they think it makes it interesting. I think they just think they need some ambient sound. Like, the Formula One engine noise is, they don't really have crowd noise in F1. A little bit. Some of that's just a tape loop that's running, and the audio engineer can hot up the audio on the audio board and put some crowd noise in there. SailGP does that when the boats sail past the grandstands in SailGP. The audio the guy running or the gal running the audio board will push that channel up and listen to a tape loop that's running of crowd noise, Prutonic, as that is. Yeah, Mark Holland, I think the only betting, there's some betting in New Zealand, I believe, and there's some betting odds in the UK on the America's Cup, but I haven't seen it in Las Vegas or here in the States. Scott Davis says that each of the boats has a unique sound, a unique noise. Jeff Kitson says retirement is the best career move ever. Somebody who was a global corporate for 44 years, retired for 9 years now, 10 sailing summer seasons. As we're back watching, again, a replay of a race, they're now 400 meters behind the Americans are. And it hasn't changed much since that first nosedive that the Americans did after going through the top gate the first time. This is only a 6-leg race. So maybe they'll get through this race and start the next one of the LVC, the Louis Vuitton Cup, second race of the finals. Maybe they'll start it a little quicker than, well, they had breeze and bump. I wonder if the TV, not that I'm going to go do this, or probably any of you is, but I wonder if the TV, Graham Sweeney, wouldn't be well served by a much more community-oriented approach than just these 4 commentators blathering on, and having, as they're doing here, who was it, Jeff Kitson made the comment about why he watches the NFL's live stream, which is a much more of a community-based thing. They're doing what on ESPN, a couple of the brothers who are former NFL stars do a kind of a back and forth watching a given National Football League game, and it's much more of like what we're doing here, and that seems maybe to be a coming thing. Graham, would you think that maybe the America's Cup in future should try to do something more like what we're doing here than what we're hearing coming off the audio right now?
I think we're doing perfectly well. I don't think we should give them any ideas. But yes, the media is changing. I mean, look at what's happening in the IMOCA when they use the drones to capture that fantastic footage. I can see the future. Well, I can't see it, but I'll predict it, that the drones will be set around the race course and they'll be covering it. Instead of having a blooming great chopper up there like they've got at the moment, they'll have the drones up there covering several sections of the race course each, just like a grid. And they'll all be capturing the data as it happens live. How they'll report that and put it into the studio like we do, I don't know. Because I got a feeling people are becoming more and more literal, and they're not able to express themselves in the same way that maybe the older sailors that came up through the ranks are capable of.
Well, it sure helps me. I mean, I'd be up here if we weren't doing these. I've said this many times before, but if I were just up watching this racing by myself, and, you know, in my bathrobe and picking my nose. And this is a lot more fun for me. I'd still be up watching it. So I hope all of you are enjoying it half as much as I am, having the Zoomers on and having everybody in the chat. I know Julia loves this as well, too. She's upstairs watching on Zoom. Scott Davis, you made a, I think, quite interesting comment here, and your sentence structure with or without coffee is just fine. Thank you. For my non-racing friends, I'm always trying to describe to them how when we are racing offshore and on our 4-hour watches, 4-hour shifts, how we try to get sleep, but the sound on a carbon fiber boat is so noisy. We often arrive very sleep deprived. Well, even on a quiet boat, you end up doing 4-hour shifts, watches, I find. Teams make a lot of mistakes at that point, indeed. Yes, indeed. Ed Worley, have you done much offshore racing? Have you done big boat sailing?
Yeah, I used to sail on Newsboy with Jack Bailey down in Southern California, did the Newport Ensenada races on the 12 meter.
Yeah.
Easterner. And we used to sail her a lot. And yeah, so, you know, it's that's where I learned how to do offshore sailings with Jack Bailey on Newsboy in Southern California. We did a lot of races out to Catalina, up through LA and everything else. And that's where I really got to love 12s even more, was racing on the 12. So
Scott Davis saying, "Newsboy!" Exclamation point. Mary Jude's MJ in Philadelphia is having a blast. Thank you, Mary Jude. Yeah, I think that's, I think Newsboy, which has, Italians fell off. Everybody's hoping the Italians would auger in and this race would get close again on the final leg, but of course it didn't. Newsboy, do you know who sailed on that boat famously? One of the American presidents who no one ever knew actually. See, he came to Newport Beach one day and sailed in that boat. Same president who was famous for wearing a suit and white shirt and tie to the beach.
Oh, is that Richard Nixon?
Yeah, Nixon sailed on that boat. He was an invited guest.
Had Spinnaker. Yeah.
Back in the day when Newport Beach was red, was Republican, conservative. Now it's pretty purple, if not even blue.
Yeah,
okay, they're celebrating. The youth are in this 3 hours and 15 minutes or so ago. And the nice job by the kids, Marco Gradoni and co, on the LRPP Youth America's Cup team. Little man love there on the Italian boat. Julie Aaron says she loves the quiet of sailing. The stink boats drive me crazy. I couldn't agree more, Julie Aarons. I do not like power boats, never have. Krasimir, hello Krasimir Naumov, who's normally in Bulgaria, normally our easternmost fozy on these watch parties. He's saying on every 600-mile race in a carbon boat, I have 4 hours of sleep over 72 hours. You drop halyard shackle, you drop just a halyard shackle on the coach roof, and whoever sleeps in the transom bunk is hitting his head. Oh, what was that? Mary Jude, have a nice rest of your day. It's 9:30 in Philadelphia on a Thursday morning. Alex Hayworth, I think we all agree with you. 200 days of AC-40 test boat. That's given these Italian kids, that, especially their helm, a huge leg up. Bobby Steele, our weather guru for the Governor's Cup down at Balboa Yacht Club. By the way, your Commodore Bob was here. Our Commodore Bob Randy was what's his last name? I sat last night at the VIP dinner with the SoCal gang, the Commodore Long Beach Yacht Club, the Commodore of Balboa Yacht Club, and the Commodore Newport Harbor Yacht Club, and it was a good, interesting discussion about youth sailing. And by the way, Bob Steele, did you know, and other of you Americans, did you know that this Kiwi gal who's been our youth sailing head chief at Balboa Yacht Club has been hired away by Alamitos Bay Yacht Club, which is also in Long Beach, next door to Long Beach Yacht Club almost. She's been hired away, the Kiwi has been hired by ABYC as their GM, not as their youth director or their racing director, but as the general manager of the club. This young Kiwi gal is very sharp, and I got to know her this year at Gulf Cup a bit more. Did a great job with the youth program, the kids junior program at Balboa Yacht Club. She's now going to be the GM at ABYC, Alamitos Bay Yacht Club, I learned last night. Okay, we're hoping that the second America's Cup race, or the Louis Vuitton Cup race, is going to take place shortly, as the TV is once again controlling our sporting lives here, or at least our sports viewing lives, as they have delayed the second race so they could play this. At least here in the States, they didn't get live to this until the fifth leg, I think one of you was saying on the chat. Don't tell me they're not going to show some kind of a prize giving. Probably are. They got to give Uni credit, I'm sure contractually, who's this Italian finance house, bank, investment house. Mention UniCredit, mention, show it every chance you get, TV. Got to pay the piper here.
A lot of briefings, a lot of sacrifices made.
And the team deserves lots of credit and TV time. Bravo Zulu to them. Oh, here's the champagne moment.
America's Cup champions, Luna Rossa, Prada Pirelli.
Da 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 da.
Good idea to keep the goggles on.
Was that champagne mum? I can't. Those of you who are champagne connoisseurs will recognize that label from afar, I'm sure.
Good job.
11:30 p.m. in Melbourne and in Sydney on your Thursday evening. Hope they start the next race soon. Yeah, we do too, John Collins. Prize award at 18:30 local in Barcelona. That's 3 hours from now.
Magnificent performance. How does this moment feel for you and the team?
How excited are you? How happy are you? They start the question with how as a leading question, the commentators do. Drives me crazy, as much as the sound drives some of you crazy.
We'll excuse the slight colourful language there, because I know you're pretty happy about that one. Look, we know that Harry Melges is listening.
It's Melges, by the way.
Would you like to say some words to Harry, Marco?
I think they had an amazing week, and there were some guys that could beat us. We knew that. I think
Ed Worley, our American team was beaten handily by the Italians. Are you surprised?
Congratulations,
Yeah,
Marco.
I thought it'd be a little closer, but I think the penalty in the start really just, once you're so far behind and you're getting so much gas from the boat in front of you, and the coat, as John Emma was talking about, with the race, with the course so jammed from side to side, you have no leverage. You can't get out on one side and get any leverage. You're bouncing from boundary to boundary, and it's not easy to do it. It's not like the old days when you could hitch out to one side and try to get a hook and come back in.
A hook meaning a wind shift.
Yeah, so you're just bouncing from boundary to boundary.
Yeah.
So it's frustrating because the penalty is just a kiss of death.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that was and it was only 1 second. I thought it was more than that, but. Andrew McIrvin, Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin, who's here for the Stag Cruise. Andrew very kindly came at our invitation. I asked him to come give the keynote address, which he will do tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock up at Tinsley Island. We've never had a keynote address before. Andrew, thank you for coming in to do that. You were superb last night at the VIP dinner. Dignified, just a brief, coherent, cogent talk, even at the end of a long day, especially for you, jet lagged. Andrew's been waking up at 2 or 3 in the morning. I see him online if I'm checking my stuff. He came over here and said hi to Julia yesterday afternoon here at the Beach Street Yacht Club. We really appreciate that, Andrew. And he's up and at 'em. He's in a hotel not far from where we are here at the Beach Street Yacht Club in San Francisco's Marina District. and he will be headed over to St. Francis Yacht Club because things started over there at 6 o'clock this morning. It's 35 minutes ago, because the gang, all the Stag Cruise participants gather there, pick up their swag, their hat and their vest and their bottle of booze, and then a lot of them get on boats and go up to Tinsley, up to 65 miles up the river. Andrew, tell us in the chat I don't remember now, with whom you are going up the river up to see, this is Andrew's third time at the Stag, so he's not a newbie. But he was superb last night, and we're looking forward to hearing his keynote, State of the Sport keynote, Friday morning at 11 up at Stag Cruise. And he's on our way, meaning, are you already on the water headed up? Have you left already? In any event, tough loss for American Magic, Rick Reynolds, yes, indeed. A lot of mistakes. Yeah, that was a tough loss when they were rounding through the top gate when they fell off the foils. Okay, they're showing beauty shots of BCN, which is a beautiful town. And they're now promoting this next race. With any luck, I guess we're only 14 minutes away from the scheduled 6:49. 13 minutes away from that. I guess it's going to show this package now. We think scheduled because the schedule's been bouncing around since yesterday afternoon. Those of you who've been watching, Graham Sweeney, are you surprised what they've done with this, shoving this youth race in between the two LBC final races?
No, not really, because they've run out of all the other packages. They've probably run over and over several times, and I think this is the only new thing they've got to show. So, yeah, they're probably using that up.
Well, at least they're now promoting what we're about to see. A couple questions here about the Stag Cruise. The Stag Cruise is St. Francis Yacht Club's annual. It's been going, this is the 67th annual. Do I have the program here? I guess I do, but it's the 67th annual Stag Cruise. It's one of the great traditions here on the West Coast, indeed, in the sport. The club has been doing this. There's a women's cruise, and there's the men's cruise, and there's a family cruise. This island that the club owns up in the Delta, it's about 65 miles northeast of us here in the Bay, in San Francisco, in the city. And it's an island that they've owned for the better part of 70 years. And the approximately, I don't know how many boats actually go up, but it's an excuse to use your boat. A lot of people keep their boats at Tinsley Island, this island the club owns, all summer long. I'll be driving up because I've got meetings fairly early today. So as soon as this is over, I'll hop in the car and drive up with a couple friends that are going up and helping me run the Stag Cruise. And there are 400 men this time. In the 50th anniversary Stag Cruise, 17 years ago, we had 550 people, and that was just too much. The toilets got clogged up, and you were standing in line to get a shower and standing in line at the bar. God forbid, stand in line at the bar. This number is perfect. It's about 400 people, and I don't know how many boats. Some people drive, some people go up in their boats. And if it's a fast boat, you're up there in an hour and a half or 2 hours. If it's a slow boat, and a lot of sailboats going up, leaving now, as I said, 6:30 in the morning, it takes 6-7 hours up there to get up there if you're going 8, 9, 10 knots. It's a fabulous event, and I hope any number of you. Hi, Hamish Ross. He's getting up, must be, to take a pee in Auckland at 1:38 in the morning. But it's a cool event, and we really I commend it to any of you who know somebody at St. Francis. You can come as a guest. It costs about $950 to come as a guest, I think. A little less if you're a member, give or take. We've tried to keep the cost down, and that's for 4 days, really, of eating. Open bar, 4 meals a day. Literally, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then a midnight snack. Tons of entertainment. We fly in some great musicians from Nashville, Tennessee, from Atlanta, from just top-notch musicians. I'm going to grab the program here as we're watching the stream off the TV. First stag cruise I went to was, I think, was 1980. It was 79 or 80, 44 years ago. And there's an extensive program that's published for all the people that are going up. And I've had the privilege of being chairman of the event and the committee that runs it this year. I chose this. You all of a certain age will recognize that album cover, right? Hamish Ross, you're just tuning in, will tell you that the Italians won the Youth America's Cup, and then the first race, the Italians won going away, 650 meters or so, big lead. They led from the start. They won the start, and they just opened up. Yes, Christopher Gillingham knows, Baton Rouge knows, that is the a takeoff. It's we took the cover of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. That, you know, that was a watershed moment in rock and roll, because that album flowed from song to song to song to song, and that hadn't been done once, or maybe one or two other bands had done it, and the Beatles did it beautifully. And then had this. Well, this isn't. These are all senior serious members at St. Francis. There's the flag officers, including a woman. We put her in Sgt. Pepper clothes. The graphics department did a great job taking off on that. And the reason I chose this is because this album, that album was, you remember what year that was? It was 1967. Okay, that's 57 years ago, but, you know, 67. We All Live in a Yellow Submarine. Well, I don't think that was on that album, was it? Was it Sgt. Pepper? I think that album was something, but that was What Will You Do If I Sang Out of Tune? So there is 4 days of action up there, and counting last night, 5 days now. Wednesday, the welcoming reception Wednesday evening, and then a full day, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday you head back. And tons of entertainment. I mean, there are lighthouse talks. We have Olympic medalists. Gary Jobson's coming in. And these are speakers at the so-called lighthouse, which was moved up there many years ago to be a bit of a staging point. And there's music. There's a rock concert Saturday night. There's a members show Friday night that is all members singing and playing. And then there are late night sing-alongs that start at midnight and go till 3 in the morning. I kid you not, playing the guitars and singing songs. So it's a great event, good fun. If you ever have a chance to go, I commend it to you. And then we also invite, I'm just looking at the comments here. We invite commodores of commodores of yacht clubs that are important to St. Francis, that have close relationships with St. Francis. And, the Lonely Hearts, Andy Cox. Commodore Pace, Tom Pace, all about the TV. I'll come back to your comment in a minute. But suffice to say, we get a dozen, 10, 11, 12 Commodores. And this year, one of those VVIPs, of course, is Mr. Dr. Andrew McIrvin, who's representing the International Maxi Association, a Secretary General, as well as the Royal Ocean Racing Club and the Royal Yacht Squadron, of which he's a member. Okay, we're getting some preliminary action here now. They're starting to introduce the teams. So the Stag Cruise is good fun. And I've been going on and off for 44 years. Tom Pace in Pensacola. I hope you stay safe with this hurricane, Tom. It looks like it's going to go a bit east of you. What we all should be working towards is the production, commentary, etc., to get our sport more eyes than ever. Instead of being critical of boats' natural sound and nitpicking all we don't like, all of us should wake up to the current technology that allows us to be witness to sailing like never before. This past Olympics was the first time that every class could be seen via the streaming media per individual choice. Yes, we all despise the commentary, myself as loud as anyone. But Tom, if we want better, the Crutonic is to grouse about it. You sound like Gordon Smith. Is to grouse about how bad it all is when what's before us poses the greatest opportunity to get our sport viewed. Okay, and Tucker Thompson, Annie Gardner, and others concur. Obviously, we don't have the right mix, but how... Okay, Tom, I totally agree, as you know, and we all agree. But here's the problem: if we don't grouse, if we don't be constructive, I mean, let's say what's good and right. We got to be constructive, Graham Sweeney. You, I'm sure, agree with Tom Pace. We got to celebrate what's good, but be constructively critical about what's not.
You kind of have to take it all in and spit it all out the other end, and hope what comes out the other end gathers into some sort of form. I agree, but if you don't shout about it, nothing will happen. Everyone will just carry on with their own way. They'll protect their own corner, and they won't listen. And media is the worst for that. So you have to kind of get in there and go, right, we want this, we want that. You know, I agree with Tom Tucker. I mean, if he wants to change, then he needs to not tell us. He needs to go to tell the people that are doing it, and we'll all go along with it because we're all behind him.
Yeah, we hope you have enjoyed the show. That's kind of interesting mashup here of Sgt. Pepper's and this discussion that Tom Pace has given us such a thoughtful comment about. There's a delay, Commodores, ladies and gentlemen, because of high winds. The wind limit has for the first time been exceeded, Mark Atchison is telling us in the chat. So here we've gone, what a venue, what a wonderful venue. And now they're in the rolling boxcar average every 5 minutes until the race committee is satisfied that over that 5-minute average, it's within the wind limits of, what is it, 6.5 minimum, and is it 21 tops? What's the top wind speed? Anybody know? Any of the Zoomers know? John Emmett, do you know? 21.5 knots. John?
I think it's 6.5 to 21.5 knots off the top of my head. But I mean, I'd say that it's good to have a huge variety of wind. I mean, everyone was complaining it was too light. Now they're complaining it's too windy. But I think, yeah, it'd be pretty exciting if they can get it to go ahead. Problem is, the wind was trending upwards.
Our statistician, Mark Holland, is saying it's 21. As 21 knots is the upper limit. Thank God it's knots, not miles per hour or meters per second or kilometers per hour, as SailGP uses. John, people want to know, inquiring minds want to know, including Graham Sweeney. He asked the same question I did. Did you get your cider?
No, nothing that exciting yet. I got a pretty breezy weekend coming, unfortunately.
Now,
it might improve the commentary.
When we say cider, what's in a cider? Is there any alcohol content in a cider?
A normal cider, I would say, is about 4 to 5%, just like a beer. But we have some stuff that will make your straight hairs curl. So Weymouth, we have orange cider that I guess is at least 9%. And I think you can get Gladiator and stuff like that that's in double figures. And it just tastes like apple juice, so it's absolutely lethal. So you go out and you sit around with a group of friends and you have half a dozen rounds, and it's only when it's your turn to stand up that you realise you might be struggling.
Tom Ogletree is saying, bring on the 12s, and I know that Ed Worley agrees, but you know, one of the problems in our sport is because it is so weather dependent, and people, non-sailors, who all of you deal with at the office and friends and family, and you know, they all say, aren't you a sailor? What's this stuff going on in Barcelona? Why can you never sail? There's either not enough wind or there's too much wind. You guys are a bunch of, you know, croutons. And of course, in the 12-meter days, the IACC days, you pretty well raced from 5 to 25 or more. And that was part of the beauty of monohulls and close-knit, closely fought match racing, and the fact that you could sail in a wide range of conditions. And when the TV or otherwise said, the race committee said the race was going to start at 1300, it did. Not all the time. You could have a dead flat-ass calm day in Newport, Rhode Island, or in San Diego, or in Valencia, or in Auckland even. But this has been ridiculous. And I don't like to grouse. Tom Pace will say, "Oh, come on, Tom. It's been interesting and exciting." But I'm sorry, the venue, in my opinion, is not correct. Oh, Cider made that mistake in France, Rhode Island Rover is saying, as we look. They've just reset it. So here we are. We've been sitting here watching this Youth America's Cup replay. And we've been on the air now for an hour and 50 minutes since our 5 a.m. start for this watch party. I sure as hell am glad I didn't get up and do a watch party starting at 03:20 our time, because then they replayed that Youth America's Cup final anyway. I would have been kicking myself because I only got 4 hours sleep as it was. I hope, Andrew McIrvin, if you're still watching, I hope you got a bit more sleep, because you got a big day ahead of us, big weekend ahead of us with the Stag Cruise, and it's great fun. I'll tell you what, one thing is, it's a big difference for me, and the Stag Cruise has had a reputation for being a lot of eating and drinking, and of course it used to be. It was a bit of a Bacchanalian fest in past times. But interestingly, I don't know about your yacht clubs, but at St. Francis and some of the Commodores with whom I was speaking last night at the dinner of the Commodores dinner afterwards, after the big reception for everybody, the alcohol consumption at clubs has gone down in the last 3, 4, 5 years by something like 25%. And of course, a lot of these clubs lose money on every cover, every plate of food they serve, but they make money on the booze. And the Commodores were all lamenting the fact, our revenue is not only the ages of the club members getting older, and fewer young people are coming in because of the fewer young people around in that demographic, but also they don't have the money to. My 32-year-old daughter, she just bought her first house, and she's got a car, she and her husband, and they sail on OPBs, other people's boats, at St. Francis, at San Diego Yacht Club. But to then, join a yacht club, to buy a boat, and to carry on is expensive. Andrew McIrvin is just arriving at the yacht club at St. Francis, which is about 3.5 blocks from where we're sitting here. Give everyone my regards, Andrew. I'll be over there in about an hour, just before they close up the 6 to 8 a.m. breakfast and picking up the stuff. Highest winds previously were 18.15 knots. Mark Holland, our crack statistician, saying in race 3 of what? The semifinals, Mark? And they have rewound, but they're winding the clock down again. Hopefully they are under that 21 knot limit now. So maybe we'll get a race in, but then again, maybe we will not. Bloody hell, it is rough. Look at that. It is bumpy. It's rough. I'll go right to the feed, right off ESPN Plus. Not look at it on a TV screen. Again, I don't want to get a copyright strike. Yeah, semifinals, Mark says the highest wind was 18 and change knots in race 3. John Emmett, if this race happens, what do you expect to see?
Well, I think the Italians are going to walk away unless there's something that happens at start time. Of course, I hope that's not what will happen, but I think we've seen that LRPP has the upwind advantage, and I think on an 8-leg race where you're just bouncing from boundary to boundary, it's very hard to overcome a speed advantage. But, if Ben could get a hook, stranger things could happen, but I suspect we're in real danger of having no more racing today.
I suspect you're right, but let's see, the clock is winding down. What do you mean? Somebody said, Ed Worley, you don't want to sail with the shrouds in my face like LRPP. What do you mean by that, Ed?
If you look in the front cockpit where the guy is down low and he has windshield, the shrouds end right there to the right side left of his face.
Not on this boat, but on the Italian boat.
On the Luna Rossa, yeah.
We'll see if we get a shot.
Right there. Yeah.
That's
nothing
that's the Brit boat right there. Let's see what we get if we get a shot here. There's LRPP. Let's see if we have an aerial of them. Oh, we're winding down. We're down to 445.
It looks like smaller jibs. They put up smaller jibs.
Boy, it is small. The Brits have a same size jib. We'll see. I'm trying to get this shroud comment of yours. See if we can get a look at that. There we go. Let's go in tight.
Look at the front cockpit to the right. See, the shrouds are right next to his face.
Oh yeah.
The base of the shrouds.
Yeah, but he's looking forward, isn't he? I don't think that would bother him too much, would it?
No, I've just been on boats when stuff's broke.
Well, yeah, you don't want the running backstay breaking, or the block at the bottom of the running backstay. We've seen that happen, kill people. In fact, sad to say.
Yeah.
Horribly
well, I used to do the running backstay on Newsboy, and that was you got to keep your light on your feet in the back of the cockpit. You really got to keep up with that. So.
Hey, it looks like this might go. We're down to 345.
Rule requirement of a minimum weight and a minimum center of gravity. So
be nice.
The team doing it slightly differently.
So that is Luna Rossa.
I don't know if Hamish Ross has gone back to bed. It's almost 2 a.m. in Auckland.
Two cycling teams.
He probably got up for a powder.
Tell you what, though, I'd rather be having my head poking
Tom Ogletree was watching TP52s this morning, and they were waiting for the wind to drop because they were over the wind limit as well. And the TP52s are where in Valencia.
Starting at the committee, but it's a little bit of bias towards that right-hand side of the start line, and bouncing off the boundaries and being on.
Okay, well, there's the simulation. What they say is the fastest way upwind, according to the computer from Cap Gemini.
This race is live.
Okay, the race is live. We've suffered through the countdown here. Yep, Hamish Ross is still watching here. You're going to see the second race now. We are going to see second race of the LVC final between the Brits and the Italians. The Italians, of course, up 1-0. And this time, who is the entry? I don't remember who entered from the port end last time. I think that was the Italians. We're going to see the Brits enter from the port end this time. Yes, we are.
Really exciting racing.
And they can come in at 2:10.
2 minutes and 10 seconds.
In 5 seconds, they can enter. That's the H line. It's that vertical. They can't cross before. And they were okay. They were in about 3 seconds late. They're the giveaway boat. The Italians, well, they were way upwind. They alternate. Whoever gets the choice, GBR will cross easily. Yes, the port tack normally. That's why they do that, so they don't have a close port starboard cross, so they don't have a dial up, so they don't have an incident. Safer. And here we go into the usual upwind right side of the starting box. That's the area below the starting line. Minute 20. Will Jimmy trail back again, do you all think? John Emmett, what would you do if you were driving or a tactician on the Italian boat this time after winning that first race so handily?
Well, I think basically you want to be at the starboard end, but gapped off. I think that's very important. But the
gapped off meaning you want to be at the pin end or at the committee boat end, or what we normally, because they're both pins, but you want to be to windward of your opponent and gapped off, meaning the distance side to side.
You want to be the boat on the right, assuming that you have enough space to leeward. If there isn't enough space and it's going to be tight, you want to be the leeward boat. But all things being equal, I think controlling that right-hand side is what you're aiming for.
Because you think the breeze shifts to the right as they get up the track?
Both that and minimising manoeuvres. And actually, I think there's a little bit of bias on that side of the start line as well. So everything's telling you.
Well, Jimmy's doing exactly what you suggested, that he be gapped off. And what I think's happening here is they're going to go straight to the boundary. he's going to go straight to the boundary on the hip, as we call it, meaning to windward and astern. They've got an advantage off the line, in fact, it looks to me. And they get to the boundary, and then the Italians will just simply tack. They'll get to the boundary, like in this relationship, and then they'll both tack, and the Italians will be heading to leeward and gassing the Brits when they tack on the port tack here in a sec. Is that your call, John?
Hey, Tom, I think the thing will be whether GBR can close up that gap and then tack with boundary protection. So for sure, 5 meters isn't enough. If they can get it up a little bit more, they've probably got enough space here.
Yeah, the Brits are now up on the hip after they both tacked. They've gapped off pretty nicely here. But we're going to see the Italians. The Italians are going to go, oh, look at this. The Brits are trying to get over them. The Italians are going to be in high mode. And they're going to try to squeeze up underneath the Brits. A lot of water coming off the Brits' starboard foil. Maybe they're sailing low and fast, trying to get across the Italians, John?
Oh, you've just got a classic drag race now, absolutely classic drag race. At the moment, I would say, the Brits have probably got very slightly the better of it. But if the wind trends 5 degrees to the right or 5 degrees to the left, wow. But, I mean, this is the sort of race we all wanted to see, wasn't it?
Exactly. Brits leading.
I think they probably need about 21 meters for a roll.
Boat speed 39, 49, so charging into this swell.
A bit of a shift to the right will favor the boat to the right, meaning the Italians. And a bit of a shift to the left, as John was saying, would favor the Brits because they'd get wound up inside of their opponent. And the Italians are capitulating, knowing that the Brits would face them, tack on their air, throw that disturbed air off the trailing edge of the sail. Oh, they put it up graphically. Look at that. There's the dirty air, and that forces the Italians to tack away, which is exactly what the Italians wanted the Brits to do. Maybe the Italians thinking the upwind left is not the favored side of the track. The Brits in the lead just on the first race first leg, I should say, of the second race. Cover, 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 Ed Worley is saying, why are the Brits? Well, problem, Ed, with cover, 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 is John Emmons been saying you got to sail boundary to minimize the number of, God forbid, maneuvers, tacks and jibes.
Hey, Tom.
John.
I think it's always important to look at the ley lines when they can go in.
There they are, exactly.
Would have meant they're doing one less maneuver, which is worth an awful lot. But actually, even if you're doing a so-called quick tack, you probably want to make sure you're up to at least 90% of speed before you throw in the tack anyway. So I think the Brits did exactly the right thing. And it'll be interesting to see if they can extend now.
What was the delta? I missed that delta. Close. Somebody get the delta?
Surely they're showing a fairly even downwind thus far.
18 knots of breeze it's showing on the screen.
Slight advantage to the British team.
7 seconds. Thanks, Mark Atchison.
Very well.
Now, if the Brits have been faster downwind, Graham Sweeney, do you think the Brits are going to be faster downwind? Will they extend? Will they maintain this lead?
I think their speed downwind was very marginal compared to the Luna Rossa, so it's still anyone's game. They've got the advantage; they're in the lead, and being in the lead in this game could be everything. But I do not discredit Luna Rossa.
Well, they're extending. The Brits are extending up to 250 meters. I don't know if they're faster downhill, or if they're sailing a touch lower, a click lower, the Italians, John Emmett's observing, are out of phase with the wind shifts, he thinks. I think, guys and gals, I think Ineos are just quicker downhill in these conditions. They've been, and the people in Barcelona who've been watching these boats over the long haul, people I know and trust, have all said the Brits have had pretty good downhill speed over the longer haul. What do you think, Ed Worley? Are you encouraged by the Brits here?
Yeah, I think they're doing really well. I think they're doing good placement on the course, and they're doing a good placement to cover, and they're really hauling it. Looks good.
Alan Long's cheering for them. Italians coming back now on starboard have extended almost 400 meters, 375 meter lead. The Brits have.
2-1-2.
2-1-2. Anybody have the course axis before 2-1-2?
So 2 legs of 8 about to be completed, and it's a roll reversal.
So again, it's an 8-leg course, so they got 2 more legs than in the past, as was the first race today. Now 2:12. Yeah, Mark, I got that. Did you hear what the course axis was before the 2:12? There's some Brit fans there in the village, in the village, in the Pueblo, the AC Pueblo, AC Pueblo in Espanol. What's that, Del? Oh, God, I just missed it. It's about the same, wasn't it? 35, 36 seconds?
17 seconds, Tom.
17, thanks, John. So they gained 10 seconds. The Brits did.
So the British team sailing into a lefty at that bottom end of the course. They came round the bottom mark in that left-hand shift. So
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Rick Hayes.
as they sail back into the next shift, which will wobble back to the right again. So in phase, Italians having to dig deep to get back into this.
Voice of Dylan Fletcher.
Having an assess. Yeah, let's hit them.
Bit of a gain here by the Italians, but the Brits still close, well, crossing by 150 meters or so ahead. They've got starboard right of way. Gordon Smith, we missed you there for a minute. Your team has led, maybe you've been following it, your team has led from the start. They started heading to leeward, got out to the boundary on the left, tacked, and were to windward of the Italians and have bounced them off a couple times in this tacking duel. And did the Brits tack too soon? Are the Italians air forward, and are they above the Brits? Boy, it's closed right up. The Italians, you can see the gauge or the distance side to side. We call that gauge, like the gauge of a railroad track.
We've seen them use that quite a lot off the start line.
Are the Italians in high mode, as Shirley just said, meaning sailing a click higher and maybe giving up a touch of speed? Well, it's close. Theo, you think LRPP are sailing lower? I don't know. They're pretty even. Now the Brits seem to be trying to close up the gauge, the gap side to side. Part of that's the perspective of the TV camera.
Shifting the course axis to 208.
208, so the breeze has gone left. It was 212, and it's gone back 4 degrees to the left. So maybe the left side of the track, John Emmett, was favored. And maybe that's one of the reasons the Italians have come back into this.
That's all.
Yeah, go ahead, John, please.
I think there was 2 things. There's more pressure on the left, but also I do think the Italians are better than possibly every team in that high mode. I think, yeah, they make that high mode work really well. but the Brits are doing a really good job just sticking their elbows out. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them extend to 400 meters on the downwind. And it's really nice to see that in this race, they're much more competitive.
For sure they are. Krasmir says, he agrees with you, John. He says that there's a left side had a lot better breeze. Jeff Kitson's just enjoying the breeze. The fact that we've got some real breeze here. There's some British fans there in the go. I wonder if he knows he's on camera there in the village. What was that, Delta? I missed that one too. I'm being Crutonic. 7 seconds, Mark. Thank you. So it was 7 the first time, and 17 at the bottom, and then 7 at the second upwind. They're on leg 4 now of 8. We'll see if the Brits, as John just surmised, or speculated, I should say, are the Brits are faster downhill. They appear to be already a bit quicker downhill. Looks like the Brits are trying to sail a touch higher and get out front of LRPP on port tack.
Francesco Bruni on driving duties at the moment. Similar performance. He's in a little lower mode, but looks similar BMG. I'd say no faster. Okay.
That's Jimmy Spithill saying no faster, meaning how high they're sailing.
Both these boats.
I think. We're seeing VMGs. My goodness, VMGs are being displayed on the TV. Pretty equal, pretty similar. 41 knots, give or take. Well, if you're a fan of the Brits, it's a bit white knuckle time. Can they keep holding off the Italians? If it's going to be this close at the bottom gate, the Italians might have a bit of a catch-up on the next upwind leg. Do the Italians have a wrap? Look at the starboard bow. You mean that you think they've got something? What do you mean a wrap, Graham Sweeney? On the starboard bow. Graham, come up on the... Yeah, what's that mean, a wrap on the starboard bow?
Well, a wrap like what you'd put on a vehicle or a boat to change the appearance, to cover over the surface instead of paint. It's like a vinyl wrap.
Oh, a vinyl wrap. Okay, they both going to lower. Well, we'll see. We get a close-up, but there could be a 200-meter lead here as they get into the gate at the downwind end of this track the second time. Alex Hayworth wondering if they hit something before the race or during the previous race. He will go look at their starboard bow again. Thanks for that, Graham. Split. The Italians going the other way. Would have you done that, John Emmett?
I think they probably felt that they had no choice because it's very difficult to overtake somebody purely by following them. But I do think it's a bit of a one-way track that you had a go left off the start line. So I think it showed that GBR had the better start for me. And then you have the long port tack all the way up to that right-hand side in the wind bend. And then if you're lucky, one and in. And so when it is that, very strategic sort of match race where you actually just want to be doing a certain type of course as if there was no other boat, like Lake Garda, start by the committee boat tack, go right, hit the corner. Yep. It's very hard to overtake. And the only way the Italians can do that is by getting some separation at some point, because if the Brits get to 500 meters, I think they have the race closed down.
Well, if they don't fall off the foils or have any other problem. Gordon, what are you eating there? You got just the bag went out of the shot.
Oh, that was a bag of Italian coffee grounds, and then that would be a cake to go with it.
Oh,
so.
Nice. Well, it's tea time for you in Copenhagen. What is it?
It's
16, 15.
Quarter past 4.
You must be encouraged by the performance of your team here.
No, I mean, as I said at the end of the first race, these are two closely matched crews and two closely matched boats, and that makes it all the more intriguing. That's an excellent series. So I'm delighted to see it. Of course, I think it's fantastic, and it adds to the intrigue to every race.
Somebody new. We got a new in the chat here. Francesco Filippini, I assume that is your name. I've got it in a different order on YouTube, Filippini Francesco. But Francesco, assuming that's your given name, is this now or is this an old? No, this is now. The Italians won the first race. Thanks for joining us, Francesco. The Italians won the first race, and it looks now, knock on wood for the Brits, that they're going to win the second race. They are sailing in what is the windiest and, I guess, roughest, maybe not the roughest, but among the roughest days we've seen. And Krasimir is looking for the Zoom info. 267-220-6570. And the passcode's 1851, Krasimir. Okay. We're watching live from Barcelona on the Sailing Illustrated watch party with our Zoomers and our chatterers, if that's the right word. Chatters. Welcome to all of you. As I hear out here at the Beach Street Yacht Club, James Sailstrom, who's staying here, stayed up in Julia's guest room last night, and he is headed over to the club for the Stackers. He is a consummate guitarist, rock and roll and country and western, but mostly rock. He lives in Nashville. We flew him in for the Stag Cruise. We're going to commemorate his late great father, Jim Sailstrom, who passed away just after the Stag Cruise last year, sadly. He was a longtime associate member of the club and played at many of the club gigs. Oh, stay on the foils, Brits. Couple of touchdowns there. Let's see if the Italians suffering a bit of the same slowdown. Yarvahe saying, let's celebrate how competitive this is. And he's hoping and maybe asserting that the best sailors will win this final. 10 seconds. Thanks, Mark.
To trim those big sails back on after having to ease everything quite a bit in these uprange conditions.
A massive righty, Krasimir thinks. Krasimir's in Bulgaria. A massive righty, and if that's the case, are you talking about an upwind right or a downwind right, Krasimir? Ineos in more pressure, Ed Worley thinks.
They've got the bit between the teeth at the moment.
There are people going to be sitting at home going, how can a boat go?
Yeah, well, Krasimir, if it's gone right on the upwind, so that would help the Italians because they're coming across from the other side of the track.
Yeah, look, there's a few things you can adjust, particularly hydraulic settings and your settings.
Some of you think there's more pressure on the upwind right, downwind left, and the Brits seem to be going just fine downhill.
Feed oil from one loaded function to another function, so the mapping of where that oil's all going is very, very important in these uprange conditions. So I'm sure there would have been
300-meter lead.
Adjustments there.
They seem quick downhill.
And the sailing team having to then execute well.
Graham, would you agree that the Brits have now have an edge? You weren't quite so sure a minute ago.
This is the race committee. We are moving the windward gate, shifting the course axis to 208 and lengthening to 1.9
Tom, I think they do have a slight advantage, but then most boats that win races are better upwind than downwind, aren't they? So
well, it depends. I mean, I'll get John to comment on that. It depends. These races are the same length up and down. And yes, it's nice to have a good start and an advantage on the upwind leg, the first leg, and you can usually parlay that into a win, as we've seen. But not always. If you've got a downwind flyer, and these race courses are not, you know, you look at the old-fashioned Olympic triangle, windward, leeward, windward, there was more upwind work in those than there was downwind work. And as Ed Worley will tell you, in the 12-meter days and the IACC days, the teams pitched the boat. That's the word they use for the upwind work, because there was more upwind work. But in this case, the Brits look pretty quick downhill, and if they have a good start and a good first leg, and then they can extend on the downhill, that could be good too, right?
I think it swings and roundabouts.
Looks like the same size jibs. Yeah, I agree, Krasimir. John, what do you think about upwind versus downwind? You'd rather have speed to burn upwind than downwind?
Well, yes, if you want the short answer, but also the slightly longer answer is with very fast boats, it's much harder to overtake downwind because the boat that's in front is throwing that dirty wind back. So when it closes up to, that 100 meters or whatever, suddenly, as long as you don't let your rival split from you, it's very, very difficult for them to overtake you. But I mean, it's always hard to tell just sat here looking at the laptop, but it does look like the sea state is more manageable.
Yes.
Maybe that's made it easier for GBR to go faster upwind. And when I was coaching 49ers, we did speed testing all morning, and boat A won, and then we did some racing, and boat B won every single short course race because their setup was easier to race with. And I think, now this is really positive because this race condition we've got now is probably more similar to what we're going to have tomorrow or less. So it just looks like Ineos is a lot more stable upwind. And if you look at their position now, more or less directly to windward, I mean, it's their race to lose.
Nice covering position here. Good point. Good. Mark Atchison, take a moment to recognize the engineering of these boats, especially the foils. With this wind and sea state, the loads are enormous and ever-changing. Bravo Zulu to the naval architects and boat builders. Ed, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I remember the stresses we had on Newsboy and the other 12s that I sailed on. I can't imagine that the stress meters on these boats were just screaming because they were talking about how they're all instrumented up. So, yeah, I mean, I did a paper on hydrofoils in college, and the amount of cavitation off these foils has just got to be, the vibration's got to be crazy.
In 2013 here, in the big comeback with the AC 70, what were the twos? And when our team, when Oracle Team Oracle Team USA, weren't we called? The cavitation was so bad off the foils on the bottom of the rudder, the T-foils, it literally burned the paint off the T-foils.
Yes,
and
one of the ways cavitation does. Yeah,
that's the cavitation. And one of the ways that when the guys figured out how to they actually did figure out a way to minimize that, and you could tell because the paint stopped burning off the T-foils. Greg Norman's a big supporter of the 52 Super Series, the TP52s. He thinks that the America's Cup should go. He's the superb YouTube channel Inside Great Lakes Sailing, and he thinks the Cup should go back to box rule somethings, 52s or 62s or 72s or 82s. Hello, J. Frederick Bland. The box score is Italians 1, the Brits nothing, but it looks like the Brits are going to win this one. Gordon, are you, I don't see you puffing on anything there. Are you comfortable that your team's going to win this one?
I noticed John's got his hand up for comment, but yeah, I think so currently. I mean, I just think these are great races, and you're relying on crews and boats to be absolutely on the edge and absolutely functioning, and that's what we're seeing. Is a slip is not good for either crew, and that really is at the pinnacle of racing, which is fantastic.
John?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, add to the previous discussion, that's why you will very rarely see the boats going more than 50 knots. So when they're getting up near that 50 knot mark, they're going to start to go lower. rather than try and push it any higher in terms of speed, because the potential gain / risk, it's just not worth it. I don't know why it's 50 knots. It might be like the 4-minute mile, but that's where it is at the moment.
17 seconds, the delta at the top gate the last time today. It looks like, as John said in the chat, this is going to get evened up 1-1. So there's the update, J. Frederick Bland. Alan Long replying to you. It looks like, as absent a disaster on the British boat, a breakdown or a splashdown or a sea monster coming in and grabbing that boat. And this is going to enhance the viewing. This is also going to extend the series, so it's definitely not going to be over on Monday. If they race on Monday, definitely not going to be over on Sunday. Anyway, 2 races a day, today, tomorrow. One of those is Saturday a lay. I think Saturday's a scheduled lay day, isn't it? And Monday, let me go look at my calendar, because I wrote all this in. Yeah, well, actually, tomorrow is a scheduled reserve day. I beg your pardon. Yeah, so I knew one of these coming ensuing days. So tomorrow is a scheduled reserve day. And then there's racing Saturday. So that would be races 3 and 4. Racing scheduled Sunday, which would be 5 and 6. And then Monday's another reserve day. So there isn't going to be anybody winning until sometime middle of next week, at a minimum. Graham Sweeney, are you holding your Union Jack pillow tight here and feeling comfortable?
I'll hold it for you, Tom. How about that?
Well, the key thing is that tonight at Colors, we're honoring your nation because of Andrew McIrvin. We have a big color ceremony. I was saying at the top of this show, a big color ceremony up there, Graham. And tonight we honor the Brits, our guests from the UK, and then tomorrow night we honor the Canadians who are here. And we display their flag all day, and then the color ceremony. The Andrew tonight will be dressed in full regalia. He receives the flag from the color guard, the honor guard, and it's a big deal. And we just have to get your flag up correctly, your Union Jack, and get the little white bits to the top, not the red bits. Here they go, Graham, Gordon, John.
Absolutely chuffed. That's fantastic. Excellent result.
And the series. Go say again.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Out of curiosity, was there any indication as to why there was so much wash coming off Ineos in the first race?
No idea. Does anybody have an idea? I see Krasimir has joined us from Bulgaria. Get your audio on, Krasimir, and chime in here on the Zoom call. We got Krasimir coming in from Bulgaria for the first time. Our most eastern Fozy, as far as I know. They're happy there in the British camp on shore. Krasimir, you got audio? You're muted, it says here on the screen. Try that.
Yeah.
Welcome, Krasimir.
Cheers, guys. It's very lovely to see you. I sadly could not come earlier because I had a funny phone call just before I joined. So, yeah, just for the end of the race, but hopefully on for the next one.
Well, I think we're done for the day, and we got a 1-1 series. Who's your pick, Krasimir, over the longer haul here in the LBC finals?
Well, I root for Ineos all the time, and I really, really hope they pull it together. What we have seen from the first race and from the second race is quite opposite. We've seen a fantastic fast Luna Rossa the first time, and now the roles are reversed. Now we see very fast and in-phase Ineos, picking good shifts and everything. So hopefully tomorrow we're going to have another neck-and-neck day, but I root for Ineos. I think they have the package to go on.
Well, I sure wish we'd find an Italian, somebody here cheering for the Italians that would come on the Zoom. This is a pretty heavily British crowd there. Even our American Ed Worley is cheering. for the Brits. Guys, I got to run. I got to get over to the club, so I'm going to wrap this up rather unceremoniously here at 7:30 our time in San Francisco. Thank you to our Zoomers. Guys, we'll see you for sure Monday unless it's a reserve day. And all of you in the chat, fabulous chat today. Lori Fullerton is cheering for, and everybody, we got a lot of people cheering for Ineos. John Collings is going to go to sleep. I don't blame you, John. And Rhode Island Rover, he said he never knew there was an upside to the Union Jack. So you've helped inform Rhode Island Rover, Michael Frank, and all of you. Thank you very much for joining us here for this watch party, live from Studio B here at the Beach Street Yacht Club. We will do this again Monday if there's racing. And if there's no racing Monday, for sure, then on Tuesday, I'm gone over the next 3 days, Friday. It looks like tomorrow is a lay day. We'll see what the TV says. We'll keep an eye on that. But tomorrow may be a reserve day. No racing tomorrow. At least that's what the schedule is. Then racing on Saturday and Sunday and none on Monday. Thank you, Theo Smith. Thank you to all of you. Richard Lawton, I will enjoy the cruise. And I'm pretty well delegated. I've got a terrific committee of guys that each running their own aspect of that. And again, thanks to the Zoomers and thanks to the chatters. John Sangmeister confirming, thanks, John, that tomorrow is a lay day. So no racing tomorrow and, of course, no show tomorrow. And you all watch it on your own unless somebody else wants to run a watch party on either Saturday or Sunday. And then if there is racing on Monday, we'll be doing a watch party again at 0500 Pacific, 0800 on the East Coast, 1200 UTC. Gets us to the finish line. Thank you all again very much. Like, follow, and share if you would, please. Julie always likes to say that. And likewise, comments. We leave the comments open even in replay, as most of you will know. Those of you who give us a few bucks a month via Patreon, become a patron, patreon.com/join/Sailing Illustrated, because that's what keeps our studio here on the air. And the equipment, I just got a new camera, actually a very cool new camera here to add to our 4-camera show. And we'll do that when I get back from the Stag Cruise. Again, the upcoming schedule, no shows over the next 3 days. We'll do it again Monday, assuming there is racing, and if not, for sure, it looks like there'll be racing on Tuesday, and we'll do a watch party then. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend wherever in the world you are. Thanks again, Zoomers. It was terrific to have you all on, as always. Sail fast, sail safe, and have fun. Ciao for now.